Joining me now from London is Tim Oliver. He's a senior lecturer at the Institute for Diplomacy and International Government at Loughborough University in London. Mr. Oliver, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening from London.
Theresa May has already lost 2 ministers, 2 cabinet secretaries. She has caucus members who say that they are opposed to this. How bad a situation is she in?
She's in possibly one of the worst situations any modern prime minister has seen themselves in. But at the same time, she is a prime minister who's survived quite a number of crises, especially over Brexit. But here she faces 2 big crises, 2 big problems. One within British politics, within her party, within Parliament, and secondly, in terms of negotiations with the European Union. She has to get a deal through her party, about her leadership, then through Parliament, and she has to sell that deal still to the European Union. That's not a done deal either. And remember that what we're discussing here is, let's put it this way, it's kind of the end of the beginning of the Brexit negotiations. This is not even about the new relationship. This is, from some people's perspectives, the easy bit. And we've got several more years of this ahead. So Theresa May is, she survived this long, she may survive longer, although maybe things will unfold in the night with regard to a challenge to her leadership or enough nominations going into what's called the 1922 committee.
Let's talk about that then. You mentioned the 1922 committee. One of the big questions someone told me yesterday was that the big question for Theresa May for this tentative agreement, or as you call it, the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning. One of the big questions for her is whether she will get this whole thing to a vote, what's called a meaningful vote in Parliament, or whether she will succumb first to a confidence vote. What are your thoughts on that?
As things stand, I don't see it getting to Parliament because there are, by the sounds of it, enough Conservative MPs who will vote this down to make it silly to put it to Parliament. But the problem is that every way forward now seems implausible. So on the one hand, there is the idea that she will get this deal through Parliament, which would also bring with a host of problems, or that we have a general election or some vote of no confidence, or that we have a referendum again, or that we leave without a deal, or that we renegotiate what Theresa May has negotiated so far with the European Union. All of those are implausible. So wherever she goes, it will be uncharted territory. This is every scenario seems implausible at the moment, but one of those is going to happen.
Is there a chance of her survival, though? I mean, if for example, before she can get this to a vote before Christmas, because a lot of people were saying she'd do a lot better to get this to a vote before Christmas, before MPs have to go to their home ridings. If she faces a confidence vote, do you think she could survive a confidence vote?
It depends how deep the vote is against her. Remember, Mrs. Thatcher survived the first vote against her leadership back in 1990, but she won that vote, but she didn't survive because enough Conservative MPs voted against her. So a lot hangs on how many Tory MPs are prepared to stick the knife in and say enough is enough. The problem is, who replaces her? Who would want this job right now? Because whoever takes her job faces exactly the same problems that she has faced. Exactly the same implausible outcomes that she faces. So nobody should really want this job. I think we'd have to question their mental health if they wanted this job. It's a massive challenge. So if not Theresa May, who? And the problem for the Leave campaigners and the Brexiteers, as they're called within the Conservative Party, is that there's no clear leader with no clear alternative plan. And that remains the biggest challenge for them.
Some people have said that at the beginning of this process, there was a saying, no deal rather than a bad deal. But now people are saying that a lot of people are calling this a bad deal, but it's better than no deal because you have the tick, tick, tick down to March the 29th when Britain is out of Brexit with or without any sort of agreement. Is that the ultimate thing that Theresa May has going for her? In addition to nobody else seeming to want her job, does she have, though, the ultimate argument that, look, there is no choice? And she seems to be making that argument. There is no choice. This is better than no deal. This is better than March the 29th. We won't have time to renegotiate something before then.
Yes. Essentially, she has the only viable plan, even though it's full of holes, even though it lacks popular support. And the problem is not that there's a lack of popular support for it. There's no majority for any outcome. There's no majority for her plan. There's no majority to reverse. There's no majority for a no-deal Brexit. There's no majority for even holding another referendum or a general election. There's no majority for anything. So nobody kind of knows what to do here. So she has the only plan on the table, but nobody likes it. It's impossible to say where we're going to go next in this entire mess. And the idea that no deal is acceptable has always been a bluff. The European Union has known that. The British government has known that. So even when Theresa May was saying those things, I don't think she entirely believed it, but she had to say it. She had to be prepared to say, I am prepared to walk away from this deal. That's the same in any kind of deal negotiation. But she didn't believe it, and neither did many other people. And now we're reaching the point where, unfortunately, there is the possibility of a no deal because of the way this has been handled. And everybody's now staring into the abyss, apart from those very committed Brexiteers who believe a no deal would be a good thing. Actually, it might cost jobs in the short term, but in the long run, everything will be fine. But to quote John Maynard Keynes, in the long run, we're all dead. So, how long are we going to have to wait? 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? They all accept there will be some economic shock and disruption in the short term.
Well, last question then. For those of us over here on this side of the Atlantic who don't really know what this entails, what does it entail? If March the 29th comes and goes, Britain is then, because of Article 50, out of the European Union, what kind of consequences would there be of having no deal?
Well, one of the problems is no one's ever really seen this before. No one's ever seen a large, developed, advanced economy try to unplug itself in the most radical way from its main leading trading relationships with the rest of Europe, and also in terms of data sharing, in terms of movement of people, movement of aircraft. We've never seen this. So there's lots of big unknowns. Some people think that suddenly we may have shortages of food. The health secretary is rumored to have said to a cabinet meeting yesterday, he cannot guarantee that people will not die as a result of a no-deal Brexit because there would be a disruption or possible disruption of drug supplies. He could not give a guarantee people will not die as a result of this. It might be only a handful of people, but that's still too many people.
Okay, one last question then. One of the questions that came up in the press conference with Theresa May, with Prime Minister May. Right. Well, one of the questions that came up in the press conference with Theresa May was, given what you've described as implausible outcomes on almost every front, what is the possibility that the British Parliament could, between now and March the 29th, hold a referendum and vote to rescind Article 50 and rescind the decision to leave the European Union?
There is the possibility that Parliament could vote on its own under parliamentary sovereignty to reverse Article 50, or at least give the intent to reverse Article 50. As I'll come on to in a moment, a lot hangs on the European Union. They could vote for another referendum, but the question then becomes, what do you put on that referendum ballot paper? Do you say, do you want to reverse? Do you want to leave on these conditions, leave on a no deal? And there is the question also of how the European Union itself would respond to Britain trying to reverse its declaration under Article 50 to leave the European Union. It's not clear that the European Union could do that. People say politically it could, but there are lots of legal questions about whether the European Court of Justice would have to rule on the legality of this, and the question also of whether the European Union would expect Britain to pay a price for this. Because from the rest of the EU's perspective, Britain has messed the European Union around for 2 years and then decides at the last minute not to do this. Well, you've got to pay a price for this, or else other member states may use this in future as a negotiating tactic if they don't feel they're getting the right deal that they want within the European Union. Article 50 has a 2-year time limit. Precisely so, no country will use this as a negotiating tactic, that once you trigger it, you're on your way out. So reversing it might have to come with a cost.
Well, this is absolutely, it sounds precarious, it sounds befuddling, and it sounds quite rich with all sorts of implications. I want to thank you for walking us through it, and no doubt we'll be speaking about it again. Thanks a lot, Tim Oliver.
Oh, many times. Thank you, Martin. Good night.